Who here knows about the recent reactions to Redfall?
I've been keeping up with it. Sadly, I haven't had a chance to play it. I am going to play it at some point, and I've been watching a lot, reading a lot about it, and trying to seek out all sides of the critique on it. But it is definitely a pretty one-sided voice out there.
People assume that I don't have positive opinions because that's all because I don't post them regularly on Twitter. But anybody knows that if you say something nice on Twitter, nobody pays attention to it anyway. But I am generally like, I go out of my way to see the best in every video game that I play, first and foremost. And
long silence.
Yeah, long. I don't want to be mean to this game because Arkane, until they got acquired by Microsoft, were an incredible company. Dishonored is like critically acclaimed as one of the most like well realized fictional universes in like video games in a very long time. Like really distinctive, really cool looking, has strong identity, strong mechanics, systems that play into the story and all that sort of thing. And Prey, though not to my personal tastes, had a really novel system that I almost feel like I would be spoiling the game by telling you what it is. But basically, you can't trust your environment is the best way I can describe it. If you want a truly unique shooter, it's not even a shooter, but it is, but it isn't. If you want a truly unique exploration experience that's unlike any other shooter you've ever played, play that's a tricky sentence. Play Prey. It's truly unique. Deathloop, very interesting, unique idea where you have to like try and figure out how to get through the day. Something we're all familiar with. How you have to get through the day and kill your target effectively in a constant like time loop, a death loop as they describe it. And that's a very fun, very novel system. But that started development, as far as I understand, that started development before Microsoft took over. It was only later that they finished it while being owned by Microsoft. I don't even know where Redfall started, but it's shit. Like it's not. It's really hard to make a bad AAA game. There's very few AAA games that I can think of that came out and were just bad. Does anything pop into your head right now where you think this
Pokemon Scarlet and the other one?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, and that's very.
But those were technical issues, weren't they? More than gameplay issues.
It may not be a gameplay issue, but a game is more than just the gameplay. And
right. Oh, absolutely.
Work.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that was surprising to me with Redfall is the gameplay itself is so broken, and the way, like I saw one review where the way to defeat a boss was to stand on a table because he couldn't shoot up or reach up or anything like that. It's just things like it's so unfinished in that game, and I don't know how much of that blame goes on Microsoft or not. I don't know if anyone that wasn't involved with it can say, but it sure looks from the outside like this game started down one path. And then because you've got to feed Game Pass, you need games that are continually adding content, or they're requiring other people, or it's almost like with Halo Infinite. I think that game started out with the game pitch of we're going to do an open world Halo. And somewhere along their way, they're like, no, this needs to be a live service game. And so by the time it launched, it was really, missed both of those targets. I feel like Redfall is probably in that same camp.
Thank you for pointing that out. You're just reminding me of something. You have to sign up for a Bethesda account. You have to.
Right.
They literally will not let you go past like the starting menu if you do not sign up for a Bethesda account. And that's the only way you can play the game. I am convinced that they were probably going to try and push this as a live service game. And they backed out. Then everybody was like, evil, like live service, fuck off, go die in a like just get away from our video games. So they pushed away on that, and that would actually explain why so many of the systems were lacking. Because one thing they do a lot in live service games is they like your ability to progress is strongly tied to how you like the numbers are balanced in such a way that like if you do this thing or get this thing, it will give you a significant boost. So the actual systems tend to be very basic in the actual gameplay sense, because if they're not, the players will be able to win a lot better. So the guns have no movement. I shot my pistol and it was like just like a static shot. There was no sense of impact or anything. I didn't feel like I was, and the number went down and the enemy died. But it was also, the enemy was also in a big, massive open area where you could just easily sneak past them. So, like, it wasn't trying to make me sneak past them because the area is so big, it's so easy to do so. There was no cohesion behind the enemy being there and how you could approach the systems, which was part of Arkane's thing. Like, do you want to attack the enemy or do you want to tell past the enemy?
Right. Like there should be multiple ways to do everything. Yeah. Whereas some of the gameplay I saw, like they literally just walk into a room, pick up the key, and walk out.
You can do multiple things. You just don't have to because the game, the location design is so bad. I feel like you want to say something there, Sherry.
No, I was going to say another example of sort of the minimal animation and sort of like immersive representation of a gun would be the punch. It's like, and sometimes the enemies like getting punched and they're just like static and they're like oh. It's like it's ridiculous. It's like they don't seem to recognize
your acting
going down.
Your acting just now was significantly better than the games. I will give you that.
Thank you.
You can get a shotgun with a spike at the end, which is kind of cool. But the vampires are the most interesting part of it. But it's just like a big, bland, empty rooms. I mentioned this. I think it was earlier, but it feels like every room they just pushed every object up against the wall, so that the monsters had like room to move around, which just makes every room look really unnatural. Like they don't look like real rooms, which
like they just moved in.
Yeah, exactly. Put up the boxes.
Not only that, but a close inspection of like some of the corpses on the ground and the blood splatter. It's not only quite low res, but it's so low res that unless you're like in an action scene and you're running past them and you don't really pay attention, at least for what the footage I was watching, it took me out of the game.
There's no sense of action. There's no like
the detail was so not pixelated, but like almost polygon-like and simple that I was like, oh yeah, this is like an asset. I feel like I'm in a developer mode. Like it just felt like I was.
The textures forgot to load in properly.
I was like, hang on a minute. I'm thinking as a developer rather than as a player now. Just looking at this, thinking, what are they doing? Like, why did they have this?
Does anyone remember Final Fantasy VII Remake with the square cup in Cloud's room, and the steps in one of the locations was just like this flat square. There was issues with the PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake where there were so many visual assets that some of them just never loaded in, and it never fixed it. The assets did exist in the game, but the PS4 just didn't have enough memory to stream all that data and keep it loaded, so they just didn't load them. And that's fixed in the PS5 version and the PC version, and that's what all the graphics in Redfall look like. I saw one person saying like, oh, it looks like the graphics aren't loading properly. No, those are just the graphics. They're just really bland and just really basic, and the cars just look like square blocks. That's
Well, I hate to pile on to Microsoft because everyone's dunking on them right now, but the when Phil Harrison did his interview the next day, I don't know if you saw that, but he was basically talking about, there was one point at the end of the interview that he mentioned that great games aren't going to save Xbox, and he was talking about the different services they have and all this stuff, and that line really stuck out to me. Like, that is why we are where we are, if that's how they're approaching it. And I mean, secondly, like, of course great games sell systems. Like, that's all that sells systems. It doesn't matter. Like, Netflix wouldn't be Netflix if it didn't have good stuff to watch on it.
Didn't the Xbox One initially, they tried to shove that down to its throat, where it's like, it's not just a games console, it's a hub for the living room.
And that's why they lost that generation.
And that's why they lost that generation. And
the fact that they're trying again, it's, if I want to watch Netflix, I'll watch it on my phone, I'll watch it on my computer, watch it on a bloody smart TV if I have one. Those are trash in my opinion. Like, there's so many devices where you would go out where they already do like a miscellaneous myriad of things, right? A console. I'm not saying a console can't do more than just games, but when you do it in such a way where the games aren't the focus and the services are just the same services pretty much as any other device that isn't a game console, but you focus so much on it that you detract from the core experience of a games console.
Right. Yeah.
You're really, I feel like you're missing the point. Or if you don't miss the point, you're really making a mistake.
It feels like they've been trying to move it back into, like, yeah, it's all about the games kind of approach. But in recent years, I mean, with the Xbox Series X, but like Halo Infinite, it's fine. But like, people have already been complaining like that the season passes for the online mode just, like, they just aren't getting them out in time. There's just seems to be development issues. Redfall isn't released in a great state. There's just a general lack of games from them.
Well, think about it. Those are the two. Like, what else did they release? You know,
I will say, I was going to get onto that. Hi-Fi Rush was fucking amazing.
Yes, it was.
And here's the thing: that's a $30 game. They're even calling it AA. But the game was fucking phenomenal because it was a complete finished game from start to finish that had no bullshit tacked on like this.
And that's the key.
If they hadn't included multiplayer in Redfall, I think it probably would have had enough time to become a really damn good game.
Yeah, there was no pressure on Hi-Fi Rush to make that a live service game or to make it an online co-op or to make it something that you have to come back and play over and over again. I feel like whoever whoever was putting their fingers into Halo and Redfall, they weren't putting their fingers into Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, so effectively looking for the word you're looking for is a complete, finished final product.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking way too much.
Imagine me paying money for a product that's finished. It's like buying a sandwich but then only getting half a slice of bread, a few of the ingredients, then I have to pay a couple months down the line for the tomatoes in like a BLT sandwich. And then the other slice, which isn't necessarily like, it's one thing to be like the lettuce is in a bacon lettuce. It's like one thing, the pickle's optional, right, in a BLT, bacon, lettuce, tomato. But then another slice of the sandwich to be a sandwich is sold later on. It's not just an optional ingredient. It is a quintessential thing to make it a sandwich, the product you're buying.
You will get some of the ingredients for free, but you have to fucking wait for them because it's not prepared yet. Like, we can only give you half the sandwich. If you wait another 6 months, we'll give you the rest of it. And
God damn it, now I'm hungry. See what you've done? See what you've wrought upon me?
It's all Nintendo's fault. It's all Microsoft's fault. I like Microsoft. I think they have
good
ideas and good IPs, and when they do really well, they bring out some great stuff. But you need games. If you don't release the games, people aren't going to like. I actually understand what Phil was saying. It's that they're not trying to ship consoles. That's not their aim anymore, and that much is true. The games won't ship consoles, But if they want people to be interested in their ecosystem, for lack of a better word, they still need to create something that people will enjoy. If you create bad games, people are going to do what Tom did and just cancel their Game Pass.
Yeah, I let mine expire recently. I'm gonna sign up for it before too long. But there's just
Starfield.
it's kind of a desert right now. I've kind of played what I wanted to play on it, and I'll come back to it. I love the Forza games. I'll point out, like, they have not missed with Forza. That is
amazing.
a series that just doesn't miss. But those successes, Hi-Fi Rush, those are few and far between right now.
So I'm glad that, especially with Hi-Fi Rush, but even in the case of like Redfall, I'm glad they're trying new IPs. However, new IPs doesn't necessarily mean a new style of game, or not just a new genre necessarily. Like the Dark Souls is technically like a subgenre that spawned loads of iterations of different developers. But the fact is that Redfall is another open world first-person shooter. So it's nice that it's a new IP, but it's a regurgitation of something that's been overdone. And I'm not saying every couple of years you need a new genre-defining thing. No, I'm happy still to play RPGs. I'm happy still to play RTSs, things that have been around for decades in terms of genres. The issue is that when it comes to Microsoft consoles anyway, although maybe the state of the market has changed, so I might be stuck in the past here, but Xbox 360, you had Halo 3, you had Gears of War, a new IP. Gears of War is why, when I was younger anyway, as a family, we got the Xbox 360. It's why we got it. Like,
It was unique and different and cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And for me, I'm always, as much as there's games I'd love sequels to, or more sequels to be greedy, at the same time, I love new IPs, even if they flop, and especially if they're trying something new.
Yeah, you can't fault Microsoft for trying something new, or giving Bethesda room to
the new IPs,
create
the new thing still needs to be good though.
Right.
Yes.
And just because it's new, it does not mean it's going to be bad. You can make new things that are good. Like every time Platinum releases a new game, it's fucking okay, unless it's Babylon's Fall.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
I mean, that was new, and that's one of my all-time favorite games. Yeah.
Sony, at least when Sony releases something new, they're like, this needs to be the gold standard, or we're not going to release this. So
the statement about games not selling consoles, though, I mean, you name a console I've owned, and I've owned a lot of them. I can probably tell you exactly which game made me buy that console. You know what I mean? Like, that's the reason I bought it.
Like, for me, with the Switch, for example, I'm very tempted to buy it just for 2 games that I'm interested in. Give me another third one, and I'm buying it. I'm really on the fence for buying a Switch. And to be fair, Breath of the Wild, Xenoblade 3, not Breath of the Wild, the first one, but the second one, and Xenoblade 3. Not to go into it, but I kind of like Breath of the Wild. It had some things I didn't like. If they either fix those or add new stuff to sort of like make it a bit more interesting for me personally, I'm very tempted just for 2 games to buy a console. It's just
who would you say the market leader in the industry is right now?
What in terms of
in
like
game? Just who do you think is leading gaming right now? As in the console manufacturer.
I would have to say Nintendo.
Okay. Would you say the same, Tom?
That's a tough one. I mean, I guess in terms of number of units sold, you can't really argue with the math.
Consumer,
but
they don't make as much money as Sony, but they do sell better.
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough.
You cannot say good games don't sell hardware when a fucking pink blob can move units.
Right. Yeah, nobody's buying the Switch for the Switch. They're buying it for the games. And I think Microsoft,
and Bayonetta, and have Persona 5 on the go, which is literally the only reason I originally got one. I even have Warframe on here, and they now have crossplay, so that's even better. Mario, the most popular character in the world, is a overweight plumber from Brooklyn with an Italian accent. We
Right.
don't need fucking Space Marines or Nathan Drake ripoffs or it's like developers have their priorities whack. We don't need next generation graphics. We don't need next generation. We don't need next generation graphics. They're pretty.
Right.
But,
I sure enjoy it. Like, I like them, but that's not a requirement. That's not what
Yeah.
it takes to succeed.
Here's the thing. What's it called? Jedi Survivor would probably run better with worse graphics.
Right.
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
graphics. So to bring in some psychology here, but to completely butcher it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid diagram, right?
Oh, we're getting really
Where-
technical here.
where-
Jesus Christ.
Where
Okay.
the bottom layer is like essential before you go to the next layer. Forget the whole like need part. But in terms of a game, for me, certain aspects of what makes a game, there's a hierarchy of preference and enjoyment. Graphics
Right.
are not first, second, or maybe even third. They're important, and if they're bad graphics, they will detract.
Yeah, and
for my game
atmosphere does
experience.
benefit a game
They're
too.
decent.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
definitely. But as long as they're not bad graphics, if they don't have to be amazing graphics to be a solid contribution and positive way to that gaming experience. As long as
Right.
they don't detract graphics, I don't care. Pac-Man, I love Pac-Man, and it's just a pop, 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 like.
I
all
think the
digits.
best way to describe it is ugly graphics, because one of the most beautiful games I've ever played is Okami on the PS2, and
Mm-hmm.
that's running on like 8 megabytes of RAM. Like,
Right. Yeah. Or Journey from the
Oh.
PS3 era.
yeah,
It
thank
sounds
you
like
very
art
much.
style is essential. Then it's not
Yeah.
just graphics and art style seem to go hand in hand when it comes to how they merge. whether they're
Journey will
successful.
always look beautiful. Okami will always look beautiful. Redfall will never look beautiful. I'm sorry. Redfall will always be ugly, and because it just didn't come together. And I'm kind of. This is why I never pre-order. Kids, never pre-order, please, because you're just setting yourself up for potential disappointment. Hey there folks, welcome to the end of the video. If you got this far, please allow me to just take a moment of your time to let you know that we do the show every second Sunday over on Twitch. We basically just sit down, myself, GamerTom, and our guest, and just talk about RPGs. Any relevant discussion, news, reviews, look backs, that sort of thing. If you want to support us, you can actually have some input on the games that we discuss, as well as the topics, and you can do that over on Patreon, same URL as here. That's TNE. So please consider checking that out. I hope you have a good day, and I hope you stay beautiful. Take care.